we're going to put together some of the things that we discussed yesterday and this morning in order to try to understand what is happening in the world today. If we bring together what we understood from yesterday about the inner and outer elements and the role of the karmic winds and how the karmic winds are coming from the afflictive emotions, we can understand that all the problems in the world, whether environmental problems or problems between different groups of people, such as countries, or groups of people within countries, all these problems, they come from the mind. The mind, because of ignorance, generates the afflictive emotions, such as attachment and anger. And because of these afflictive emotions, engages in various actions. These actions leave some imprint on the karmic winds, and the karmic winds gradually collect of all the sentient beings in the world, and from these collections of karmic winds we have environmental disasters. I'm saying disasters because that is the story of our time. I wish I could say from the pure energy and activities of the sentient beings we have a beautiful environment where everything is harmonious and everything grows abundantly like in Neveshalom. Have you been to look around this village? It's beautiful. It's a possibility to have a beautiful environment. Maybe the karma generated in creating this village somehow had an effect on the environment. You can see this in various places. Where there's a lot of negativity, a lot of hatred, a lot of fighting, a lot of aggression, vibrations are created, and you can feel those vibrations. It seems to me that we can feel the vibrations from Syria. Here. It's heavy.
The vibrations from here are howling now.
That's another matter. You will be exploring that issue too. It's not for me as an outsider to necessarily make judgment about the place that has been so welcoming to me. But we're going to have some discussions shortly, and you will be able to discuss your own situation. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the disharmony of the elements in terms of the world. For example, sickness, disease. When the elements in the body are unbalanced, and when the mind, the consciousness element, is disturbed, you get sickness. It's quite simple, really. You can understand it when you think about it. That the elements are not stable. Earth, water, fire, air, and space are either in conflict or they're not stable. There's something excessive, something that's not strong enough. And then the consciousness with a lot of afflictive emotion. It could be a lot of desire, that disturbs the mind, or it could be anger, that disturbs the mind. There's many different ways the mind is disturbed. And then with the ignorance, which is grasping at me the whole time, can you see that if something comes into the body, maybe a virus or something, it's going to glow. Whereas when your mind is healthy and your elements are balanced, even if you encounter many people with this virus, you have a strong immune system. And somehow it's harder for it to penetrate. You might get a small effect. And your friend, the same virus, they are in bed for weeks. And you, what? Why didn't that happen to me? And then you think, oh, maybe I have some resistance. And then populations. Some diseases go through populations. You can look at the statistics from the World Health Organization, and you'll see that certain populations are more likely to have cancer, for example, and so forth. There's many examples that you can look at. And when you look at the stress levels in certain cultures or societies, because of the pressure of the way people live and work, and the energy is actually not good for the immune system and the human being. And those energies of stress and tension, they also affect the environment. So we can see it to quite an extent. Nowadays, we have many environmental disasters, geocatastrophes. I mean, the most important one that we're facing is the global warming. This is very, very serious, as we all know. I don't need to tell you. Climate change. Sorry.
Climate change.
Yeah. It was wonderful when everybody agreed in Paris. That was one of the most positive things in 2016, actually. Probably the most positive thing on the world level. But of course now there's an American president who thinks it's a hoax. So we have to see what happens with the American commitment. Because they're very, very influential, and they are responsible for 40% of the carbon emissions of the world. So if they don't ratify the agreement, it's not so good in terms of the influence on others. Whereas the Chinese, which have been very serious polluters, are actually really taking it seriously now. So all these things have karmic connections. The mind of the people on a particular part of the world is going to affect, well, who they vote for in the case of a democracy, or what kind of policies can. China's not a democracy. But the consciousness in China has really improved. I heard many young kids, really very strong environmentalist consciousness. And one reason is because their culture is very based on science. It's quite helpful. Then, of course, we have the role of the media in just influencing people, nowadays especially, more and more, to in a completely irrational way. So this is having an effect not just on the mind of one or two people, but on the general minds of the population, to think in a certain way. And then there is definitely some karma coming from so many minds going in such a direction, especially if the media are influencing them towards hatred or attachment. So the advertising industry is generating the attachment in everybody very strongly. And often it's the military establishment or the media that's influenced by them, or maybe the arms manufacturers, I'm not sure, who are influencing towards war because they see some benefit to their own self-interest. And then when the populations want to go to war, it's not hard actually for a political leader to make their population believe that the war is a good thing. In fact, it's a way for a political leader to regain popularity when the popularity is going down.
We had lots of examples.
Of course, and it happens all over the world. It's not unique to Israel. It happens everywhere. It happened in the UK, it happens in America, it happens in Russia. You can see it everywhere. Now, if the political leader may be a little worried about their popularity, then they think, oh, who can we invade next? Which actually is the name of a very funny film, which you might enjoy. Where Can We Invade Next? It's by Michael Moore. I do recommend it. It's very positive. It's not a depressing film. It's a happy film. You know Michael Moore? Michael Moore, yes. Anyway, that's another point. I mean, I never knew what a tsunami was until that big tsunami hitting Thailand and Sri Lanka and many other countries around the Indian Ocean. So now tsunamis are getting more common. In Japan, they had tsunamis. And this is the causes of that are partly the earth element, which is the tectonic plates. It's partly the water element, obviously, which is the sea, and the wind element, the natural energy of movement. And together, it's creating an incredible disaster. And then the hurricanes. There's mainly, we see a lot of hurricanes hitting America. There was the famous one in New Orleans, Hurricane Katrina, really devastating.
And I always get a woman name.
In Haiti also?
Some of them have male names.
Richard? No.
Yeah.
Some of them get.
Some of them it's
Really?
according to
Anyway, it's the
the
power of
they
women
have
that is celebrating. Don't worry.
they can't
We must think about war, because there's a lot of war, and there's a lot of danger of war. What is it that drives a people to war? Usually it's nothing to do with what the people actually want. And it's usually some fabricated sort of anger coming towards that other group for some purpose to keep this political interest in power, or maybe to gain some natural resources such as oil, or nowadays such as water. So this is also how the elements is coming into the human conflict situation. There are now wars about water. In fact, there is one theory that the whole Syrian conflict is connected with the water problem. I don't remember all the arguments, but these things are all interconnected. And the problem is that the more that the negativity grows and becomes propagated by the media, it's now very hard not to get a sense of, can't do anything. Let's have a beer. I mean, what kind of reaction is there? So we have I don't know about in Israel, but certainly in the United Kingdom, there's a lot of behaviors which are a kind of denial. Escapism. Escaping from how terrible the world is by doing a lot of drinking or drugs or partying or many, many different activities used to give some short-term nothing actually, but so-called happiness. But it's not a solution at all. And what we've been exploring a little bit through the Kalachakra helps you understand all this. The karmic winds are going through the body of each of us, and unless we take a lot of remedial action to stop the negativity in our mind and in our system, then it's very hard to resist the effects of this world situation. But with the Dharma teachings on compassion and emptiness, it's really possible to turn it around so that instead of joining in with the afflictions of desire and anger and so forth, actually one transforms those into the path. And instead of being something harmful, it becomes like the petrol you put in the tank of the car going to enlightenment. And that is what happens with a practice like Kalachakra. I didn't say much about the Kalachakra deity. It's too much to say, but I'll just say one thing which is quite interesting. Kalachakra has 4 faces, and each face has a different expression. And the expressions are connected with emotions. The front face has got fangs and is frowning. It's quite fierce, and it's the transformation of aggression and anger.
Again, please.
It's the transformation of aggression and anger into compassionate action. Not just compassion feeling, but compassionate action. Actually doing something useful, something helpful. And taking the energy of the anger and using it in a positive way. The right face is red and lustful, full of desire. Okay? Again, taking the energy of desire and transforming it into the blissful mind of clear light. Desire is just wanting more and more happiness, never satisfied. Oh, give me some sensory pleasure. Okay? In the Kalachakra, it's taking the energy of that and using it to bring the winds into the central channel and transforming the mind into the clear light, which can then realize emptiness very easily. And the mind of Kalachakra is indivisible bliss and emptiness. Yesterday I mentioned immutable bliss. Immutable bliss. It means bliss that doesn't fall off. It doesn't stop. It doesn't change in the sense of losing it. It continues. This is the transformation of this red one. The back phase is yellow and it's in meditation. Okay, so through the meditation, through the inner process of transforming the mind, then everything else is possible to do effectively, to do constructively and positively. And so this face at the back is representing that. The left face is white and peaceful. It's similar energy to Avalokiteshvara, generator. It's white and peaceful. And of course, if you balance this face and this face, you've got 2 sides of the human activity, the peaceful one and the wrathful one. And these energies are very useful for a practitioner in the world. So I just mentioned that to give you a sense of how the practice of Kalachakra can help you to take all this negative energy, which is around us all the time and also coming through us, which is actually very dangerous for us, to take it and transform it into something positive. It's like the nuclear energy. it's dangerous. You can make bombs with it. Even if it's not managed properly, even the nuclear power station can be very dangerous. But if you can control it, you can light the whole of Tel Aviv with a small amount. So it's like that. The energy from these afflictions, which is potentially dangerous, can be transformed into a very powerful path. Instead of being destructive, it becomes positive. Useful. Okay. So, the next activity is for you to meet in a small group, and you're going to be with this group for the rest of the morning and also in the beginning of the afternoon. And you're going to go through certain discussions together, and eventually this afternoon you're going to do a little presentation. Very, very simple. It will only take 1 minute. So I'm not trying to say it's a big thing, but I'm just mentioning that. And in this group you're going to be discussing the world situation. I say world situation, but in response to what Vada said, I also think that Israel is a microcosm of the world in many ways. What we see happening around the world, we can see here. And so it may well be that you would like to talk about your own geopolitical situation. That's the topic, the geopolitical situation. What do I mean by geopolitical? It's the way that geography, in other words, this whole situation with the environment, the elements, the technology, the cities, the roads, the transport, all these different issues which are to do with social organization, how it impacts on the environment. That's the geo. And the political, of course, is about the power. How the power is used and how the people are involved in that. So I'm not just talking about the politicians. The people put the politicians in power if it's a democracy. And if it's not a democracy, the people either change it or they put up with it. So we can't just blame the politicians. I mean, you can say some bad things about the politicians if you want. Sometimes it makes you feel better, but actually, it's not really the solution. The solution is to recognize that the power is always with the people. That's my opinion. You might disagree with that. But in a sense, we're all responsible. I think that's important to recognize.
Then you have an ignorant democracy.
Whatever. Some people think that democracy might be, maybe not the best system. But if you look at the dictatorships in the world, they don't look so good either.
Better one.
Okay. All right. So please consider, especially the geopolitical situation, maybe in your part of the world, or maybe you can discuss the whole world. Please consider the global warming, because it's a major issue for the whole world, and in the next 20, 30 years, the ice cap is going to melt, the sea level is going to rise, and a whole lot of other changes are going to happen as a result of that. And it's very likely that that is going to happen. I think we should get real and recognize that these things are already happening. And what are the implications for the world? Many of us in this room have children. What are the implications for our children? Okay, these are questions which are in the back of our mind a lot. So let's think about it. What do our children need to, what capabilities do they need so that they will be able to be useful in their time? I mean, maybe some of your children are quite grown up now, like Shan and me, we have, our oldest is 38. So already, they're active in the world. What do they need in order to be active in a positive way? So think about those things. And Also think about the idea of collective karma. When a whole people together push in a certain direction, it's going to push the whole society because they're creative some causes together. Okay? Of course, if some of them die, they might not experience the results. It may be some other people who come to experience the results. But nevertheless, there is some sense in which we have a collective responsibility. Okay? So these are the kind of questions to discuss. I think a group of 3 is quite good for this kind of discussion. I'm a little tempted to make it larger, but if you have 4 or 5, there's a danger that somebody won't speak at all. And even in a group of 3, it's quite possible for 2 people to talk and the other person to sit and listen. So please try to make sure everybody joins the discussion in your group. And you can choose whoever you want to work with and find a nice place to relax. And you have about 15 minutes before I give you the next instruction.